Do you wonder if others are dealing with the same project management challenges as you? Not sure where to turn for guidance and leadership? Office hours are in session as we discuss project management and PMOs with global leaders, hearing their story and learning their secrets to success. Our goal is to empower you and help you elevate your PMO and project management career to new heights. Welcome back to Project Management Office Hours with your host, Pmo Joe.
Welcome, everyone, to Project Management Office Hours. We're the #1 live project management show in the United States. And today we're broadcasting to you from the Phoenix Business RadioX studios in Tempe, Arizona. I'm your host, Pmo Joe, and for the next hour or so, we're going to be talking project management with our special guest. Hard to believe that it's February. I mean, 1 month is gone already for this year. Time is flying. And hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to watch our live stream events for the first shows that we've done on this year. And we are now, experienced a little bit on the live streams, feeling a little bit more comfortable. So we'll see how the rest of the shows go as well. I also want to say thank you to the PMI Phoenix chapter. They hosted me last Friday for their January breakfast kickoff meeting. And that was a lot of fun. We talked about the project management journey and how organizations and PMOs mature as they move through that journey. So that was a great show. So thank you for that. Also want to mention that coming up in February on the 22nd here in a few weeks, the PMO Leader Platform is going to be hosting a panel discussion on the Digital Transformations webinar. That's going to include Americo Pinto, Laura Bernard, and myself as the panelists. So that's going to be a fun time. First time ever that Americo, Laura, and I have actually shared the stage together. So I'm super excited to be with them, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Also want to thank our sponsors, of course, the PMO Squad and the PMO Leader. Without them, none of this is possible. Certainly go out and visit their websites to learn more about all they have to offer and how they can help you in your career growth and development. Reminder, we are live streaming for those who are out there and watching the show. If you have questions or want to interact with Louise or I, please feel free to ask the questions. Can't guarantee we'll get to all of them, but if you do ask, we certainly will try to get to them and make this be an interactive experience for everybody. So with that, I'm super excited today to have with us from Australia, Louise Gardner. Welcome, Louise.
Thanks, Joe.
If you can take a moment just to introduce yourself so everybody out there gets to know you a little bit better, that would be fantastic.
Sure. And first of all, I want to say I'm super pumped to be here. I'm a long-time fan of the show, so thank you for having me on. I'm Louise Gardner. I'm the founder and managing director of Pledge Consulting. I set up the business in 2012, so almost 10 years ago now, really because I was super passionate about helping organizations to get value from the way they manage projects, and in particular, value from PMOs. I was client side for about 15 years before I started the business, had a range of senior management roles in large companies. So I'd seen a lot of consultant activity, good consultants and bad consultants, and I got to a point where I thought, I need to have a crack at this. I think there's a lot of value that can be had. Other thing to note about me, you might tell by the accent, I'm not originally Australian, although I am a very proud Australian now. I'm from Liverpool in the north of England, and I've been here almost 18 years, so the accent's obviously not going anywhere.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and certainly appreciate you taking time. I know it's your beginning of your Friday, end of our Thursday over here. For those watching, and you see me wearing a bit of a sweatshirt, it's our winter in Phoenix, which usually means instead of being hot, it's just warm. But today it was actually cold. This morning it was 0 degrees Celsius, 32, when I helped take the kids to school. So it was a bit chilly for us. So I'm not used to the cooler temperatures. I know it's summertime for you over there now, right?
Oh, it's beautiful here. Actually, it's a little bit cooler today. We've had a run of kind of 35-degree days, so it's borderline a little bit too hot. Sorry to rub it in. But I had a Facebook memory pop up this morning, and actually 9 years ago today, I was actually in Scottsdale for Super Bowl Sunday. And there was a huge, big power outage. So we missed the Super Bowl, which, not being a huge fan of the sport, didn't trouble me too much. But but it was warm. We were in the pool, so yeah, it is cold for Phoenix.
Well, the Super Bowl will be back in Phoenix again next year, so come on back. We'll get together. I invite everybody, whoever's listening, come on out for the Super Bowl. And then for those on the live stream, pop in the comments. Just let us know where you're joining us from, Australia or States or anywhere in between. It'd be good to know where you're joining us from. Let's start with maybe a little bit of your story before we jump into the PMO type topics. You mentioned it in your introduction that you're originally one of the Beatles and you're from Liverpool. Maybe not. Maybe one of the fan club members. Who knows? But you're in Australia. So how did that happen, right? How do you make that journey from the UK to Australia?
Yeah, look, it was never really part of the plan. I didn't really have a plan. I was kind of a bit of a directionless kind of teenager. I dropped out of school in year 11. I was just about 17. I was pretty smart, but I was bored with school. There was a world out there that I felt like I needed to engage in. So I had a series of jobs, let's call them. I worked in a recording studio for actually while I finished school as well. That was quite fun. And it went downhill from there. I did a stint at the local KFC, worked in a bar, worked in a car rental place. And eventually I fell into actually a call center job with a water company. And back in those days, you didn't read off a script when you worked in a call center. You actually had to know how to solve people's problems. They gave us such great training. Somebody called up and said, hey, we've got no water. We had to learn what the causes of that might be and do diagnostics on the phone with the customer. So I was in that job for about 12 months and kind of enjoyed it. But I enjoyed the learning more than the kind of social interaction. That got old quite quick. People ringing up angry every day. So I saw an internal job advertised for a project controller. Now, I had no clue what a project controller did. I had no clue really what a project was, but went for this interview. And I don't know if I was the only person that applied for the job. The competition must not have been fierce, but I got the job. And the really cool thing about that is that the guy that gave me the job, who went on to become quite a good friend, he taught me everything he knew. He was a civil engineer. He was probably in his 50s at that time. He was really a mentor, and he taught me everything he knew about project controls, PMO. And I began to get very passionate about the discipline of structure and governance around projects. I kind of a bit unusual in some ways because a lot of people become project managers and then go into PMO. I actually started off in PMO and then actively started trying to get project manager roles because I felt like you can't properly govern projects unless you've had the credibility of delivering some. So I went off and did a few delivery roles and ended up running that team actually several years later. About 6 years later, I ended up managing that team. So I became the project controls manager. The projects that we were working on were huge, multi-million-pound projects, civil, mechanical, electrical projects, some IT and technology projects. So there was a huge learning experience for me. I got my hands into everything. We implemented PPM tools. We put in new risk structures. We did a lot of contractor management. So I was able to work closely with the big constructors, big global constructors, which was great experience for everything that was going to come after. And then after a couple of years of being in that role, which really was kind of a dream job for me, I really felt like I'd found my niche. So the company, I should say as well, sponsored me to go back through uni. I realized very quickly when I found my place in the world, to advance any further, probably needed to go and finish my education. Mm-hmm. So the company supported me. I went to Liverpool University and then Liverpool John Moores University and finished a Bachelor of Business degree. The company let me do it part-time. They were so supportive, It was really, if I hadn't have come to Australia, I don't know if I would have ever been able to leave that company because it was just, I never seemed to exhaust the opportunities. So that was all great professionally, but personally, I wasn't in such a great spot. So I'd renovated a house, So that had been like a 5-year project, and that had come to the end. I'd finished my degree. I'd finished a fairly long-term relationship, and I'd had some health problems. I actually had, I was only about 27 at this stage, but I had a thyroid crash, which went undiagnosed for a really long time because young people aren't supposed to get that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I felt really awful, like just, lethargic, bloated. So I was in a real personal funk, and it was a good moment to ask what's next. And what's next, for some reason, involved moving to the other side of the world. Australia had never really been on my bucket list. I'd never visited before I decided to move here. I'm not a big fan of the cold and the grey. So I knew wherever I was going had to be sunny and warm. So off I came I sold my house, packed up a 3-bedroom house into one suitcase, and off I came for adventures. And I've got to say, initially, it wasn't a career move. There wasn't a lot of PMOs here at that stage. There were some, and I'd come out of the water industry, and there wasn't a lot of water investment going on in Sydney at that point. Now that changed reasonably quickly, but it definitely wasn't a career move. It was a personal move, and with hindsight, it was the best career move I've ever made. But that wasn't really how it started off.
Well, and I just want to mention that we're all in good hands. The Marvel Universe is looking over us right now. Tony Stark has joined us. So Iron Man, thank you for joining us. I appreciate that. Keep us all safe as the show continues forward. But that's one of the themes we have from the show, and all the different guests we've had is kind of that what's next moment, right? Everybody who you hit that crossroads at some point, whether it's your career, your personal life, like you mentioned, and it's, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay on the road that I've been on, or am I going to venture off this and try a new path? And that takes courage, right? I mean, you went to a different country, you went to a different continent, you went to an unknown place. I just think everybody needs to have that incentive sometimes, that if somebody else did it, I can do it too. And so I salute your courage, right, to be able to make that change many years ago.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I actually think it would have taken more courage to stay. Probably didn't need to go as far as Australia. that was probably where I went out on a limb. But yeah, I was bored and I had no ties really. So I recognized it as being a now or never moment.
Yeah, and again, thanks to everybody who's been joining in, Australia and Pakistan, and we've got people coming in from all over, and Irony Man instead of Iron Man. I like that, Tony. That's nice. The other thing I was thinking about with you, and as you made your change and went through all of this, is that you had to learn a new industry, right? I mean, you like you said, you didn't start out in this space. How do people learn, right? I mean, again, PMO isn't easy. And you went in uneducated. You didn't have a degree at that time. I shouldn't say uneducated, but you didn't have your degree. You didn't come up through the ranks of project management. So how do you start off in that PMO space?
Such a great question, hey, because I talk about this to people all the time when they're shifting between industry types. So for me, it was a lot of listening. I felt very exposed. Actually, every day I felt like I was going to be found out for about 2 years, because I'm sitting down with project managers who are, engineers, and I'm asking questions around baselines, and I'm asking questions about forecast cost to complete. And I'm learning this, all the technical stuff around project controls, but without really understanding the engineering speak. So it was all about listening. I never claimed to know anything. I didn't. I listened, and I was a fairly bright kid, and I was super keen to succeed. So I asked lots of questions. In technical industries, we talk in acronyms, and that's not just different between engineering and IT. That's different from business to business. And you start off somewhere new and you think, oh, I should know what that means. It's okay not to know what things mean. There becomes a time though where you should have asked the question.
Sure.
So my whole thing was about making sure I asked the questions nice and early. So ask them up front. So asking questions, learning quickly, listening. I guess that was it really. Just being keen and not claiming to know anything I didn't. I was young enough and green enough I could get away with it.
Well, and you did another leap, right? Starting your consulting firm you hadn't done that before. You worked in corporates your whole time, and now all of a sudden you say, I'm going to go out on my own and create a consulting firm. What was that journey like? I'm sure that wasn't an easy road for you either.
Look, it wasn't quite as steep a climb as it may have been. I really did ease into it. I very much the first couple of years I was just a contractor really, and then you build these business relationships, and then the client will say, "Oh, can you provide somebody else who can help with that?" And before you know where you are, you've got few teams on the go. So it was a gentle slope rather than a steep climb. It probably took 3 or 4 years really before it was sustainably bigger than just me. So it's been a gradual journey. I never felt any pressure to build something big. I want to build something good, and that's the journey we're on. I'm not looking to build an empire here, but we are a growing business, and we're striving to get bigger. Yes, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to build something bigger, but I want to build really a brand that's renowned for excellence in the PMO space. That's what's really important to me. And I think because we're doing it gradually and because there's quality at the root of everything we do, that's kind of the reputation we're starting to become known for certainly in Sydney and in some of the other Australian cities too.
And same for me, but similar journey for me with PMO Squad, right? It was, I'm done with the corporate world. I'm going to go run a project somewhere and be my own boss and never have to worry about companies again. And here we are, PMO Squad is doing well and growing and doing awesome.
I've got a couple of character flaws as well that helped me along this journey. So I don't have a very long attention span. And what I was finding later on in my career is that you take a job and the job's fantastic. It's senior, you get the car, you get the toys. And after 12 months, I'm thinking, I've kind of done this now. So being able to dip in and out of clients really suits me down to the ground. And the other thing I really like is dysfunction. So to be able to go in and create order out of a bit of dysfunction and chaos, I find really satisfying. So those traits don't serve you that well in the corporate world, but they actually serve you really well in a consulting environment.
And one thing I learned, well, a lot of things I learned when we started PMO Squad is, hey, you have to be a salesperson, you have to be an accounting person, you have to be a marketing person, right? Obviously, you're an expert in your field. That's your trade that you're selling those services. But you learn so much more about business, which actually makes you a better partner once you land your work. Did you have the similar experience as that?
I learned very quickly what I'm not good at. I'm the only person probably when I arrived in Australia, I've been here for about a year, I went and did an MBA. So again, I always kind of knew that I was going to start something myself. And I thought, an MBA will serve my corporate career well, but it will also, as you're talking about, shore up some of these skills I'm going to need, when I'm out in the world on my own. What I realize is being able to pass an exam in finance does not make you an accountant. So I'm probably the only person that's done a business degree and an MBA and can't make a balance sheet balance. So very early on, I learned to outsource. I can tell you all about the theory of making a balance sheet balance, but yeah, outsourcing. So, in the very early days, you kind of have to do everything yourself. And I was obviously at least semi-successful because here we are almost 10 years later. But very early on in the journey, we get marketing support, we get sales support, we get definitely financial support. So that was a big lesson for me. And I actually wanted to do everything myself initially for lots of reasons, control, keeping expenses under control. But there comes a point where you have to think, if I'm going to scale this business, then I need to focus on what I'm good at. So that was actually quite a big learning curve for me, probably one of the biggest growth edges that I've been through on the journey.
Yeah, it's another piece of feedback, right, for our listeners out there who are thinking of starting their own company. And Elise Stevens, I saw just popped on, right? And Elise has her own business there in Australia as well. And there's more to it than just knowing your own trade, right? It looks good until you get in it, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a lot harder. But the reward, the personal satisfaction's worth it, right? So have that courage to go to a different country like you did, but then have that courage to start your own company, which you did, and you get the rewards from that.
And I've got to say, despite all of that, And I work harder than I've ever done, by the way.
Yeah.
But I don't, in terms of, time, and, you're always thinking about the next thing. But I dance to work every day. I'm having an awesome time. And, I've never quite felt like that I had good jobs. I enjoyed working with people. There was lots of positive things to be said about corporate life, but I'm having more fun than I've ever had right now.
I love that, dance to work every day. I had not heard them. I know what you mean. Yeah, the figurative. I love that. I think that's what we all need to focus on. Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, all right, so let's talk PMOs again, right? We certainly touched on that a little bit earlier, but let's get into this a little bit more. You certainly have that unique experience of not being in it when you started and lots of lessons learned. Of course, as a consulting firm, you're helping companies with all of that as well. But what do you think are some of the common challenges, right, that PMOs face when they're getting set up?
Look, there's a few big commonalities, I guess. Sponsorship, I think, is always the main one. Sometimes people are told by other consultants that they need a PMO, which is great news for us. Can come along and help us. But they're giving that advice without really understanding what it means and the level of sponsorship and the level of business change, transformation, dare I say it, that needs to happen for that PMO to be successful and to create value. So there's always a learning journey there. And it's a learning journey that needs to happen upwards and downwards sometimes. Most often, in my experience, the executive team will have an understanding of what's required, but they'll need to push that understanding down into middle management. Quite often we see middle management challenges around, okay, we have a PMO now. We need to hold them account and accordingly, we need to hold you to account. But also it's a big cultural change for project managers if they haven't been used to working in that kind of standardized way that we try and introduce as a PMO. Common challenges usually all around culture, people, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's project manager engagement. I think that's our biggest common challenge. We of course get more technical common challenges around people who want to be rigid in certain methodologies or like to do things in a certain way. We will always face some of that. But again, that comes back to this whole culture change and transformation piece.
Do you see any difference within different industries or size companies for challenges, or is that just consistent? Obviously, people and culture are part of every company, so maybe that's just a common problem.
I'm speaking obviously very generally, but our client base is pretty much all big companies, but we do have some smaller departments within, maybe small government agencies, local government type things. So we do have some smaller clients. And honestly, if I think across all of them, and we also service a lot of IT and technology, interestingly, given my background was started in construction, but most of our clients are in IT, technology, but we do have some still in that engineering space. And, I'm thinking as we're talking, and I think these challenges are common regardless of how big your PMO team is, or how, whether you're dealing with a $4 billion portfolio or $100,000. You've got to get people's mindset in the right space around the PMO is here to make sure we deliver value on our investments, whether that's shareholder money or whether it's taxpayer money. PMO should be about value.
So how do you overcome those challenges, right? I mean, it's one thing to identify, hey, here's a common challenge you have, but we make our money, right, as consultants when we can solve those. How do we do that?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a playbook for it. I think it's a people-centric solution. It's about understanding the concerns. And look, there's a lot of commonality in the concerns. So there's probably a lot of commonality in the way we address the concerns. But I actually think, if I think across my team, I think my team members will address that in their own style. PMO is such a people-centric department team. It's about giving people a level of comfort that you're there to support them in the journey. And these things that they think can't be done, shouldn't be done, let's just deal with them one step at a time. Let's not, evolution, not revolution is one of my favorite sayings. let's just get to the next little bit, and then we'll sit back and we'll review. And if we've got challenges, if we've got political hurdles, if we've got, our framework isn't working for us, let's just deal with that as we go. So it's about not announcing, I'm here, we're going to fix everything, it's going to be great. It's about being sensitive in the way that you deal with the concerns. And again, that's the same conversation about different topics, possibly, but whether you're talking to a department general manager or a CEO, or whether you're talking about a project manager who's worried that he can't get his project over the line, it's the same approach.
One thing we always hear is, hey, can you fix this for us in the next 3 months, right? And it's, to your point, is you just can't, right? It takes time to go through that journey, right? Maturity doesn't happen because you put a time frame to it. Maturity happens over a course of time to mature, right? I would imagine same experience that you find as well.
Yeah, look, we often will be, we've got 3 months to do this. My favorite one, and we get a lot of this, is we've had an audit report and we need to fix it before the end of the year, or the end of the financial year. Can you help? And of course, the answer is we can absolutely help you. Can we get you to where you need to be in 3 months? No. Can we get you to a place where you know what needs to be done and you can start to do it? Absolutely. And usually that's enough to respond to audits. They just need a plan. But people hate it when I say this. When I say people, clients usually, to set up a new PMO or to reboot a PMO that's not firing is a 12 to 18 month journey. And even then, I don't think I've ever seen a PMO that's finished. But you can start getting that value relatively quickly. It's not like nothing's going to happen for 12 or 18 months, but once you decide as a business that you're going to go down the road of creating a project management office or an enterprise project management office, and you are going to invest in that structure and the transparency and the tools and the training to get to that level of maturity, what you're saying is you're going to change your business. So yeah, it's not something you can do in 10 minutes.
Yeah, and executives don't like to hear that, right? So one of the challenges, I always like to talk in non-project speak to help them understand, right? And I said, listen, I've got a 14-year-old son, and I'm tired of driving him to school early 3 days a week so he can get there for his early sessions. So every time we get in the car, I say, hey, Zach, you want to drive today? The reality is he's not mature enough to drive that car. So it doesn't matter if the executive, right, me, wants him to. He's just not ready. And that's what executives sometimes need to take a different perspective on this to make sure that we're understanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we focus on what we can do in the time we have rather than what will need to come later. And there's, usually, again, if they've got the right level of organizational buy-in and sponsorship, then you can do a lot in 3 months. You just can't finish the job.
Right. Yeah. You can give him some driving lessons. That doesn't mean he can pass the test yet. Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely. Just a comment here that came in from Beatrice Oglesby. PMO is about value-add, people-centric teams. Yeah. Your thoughts on that, Louise?
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely couldn't agree more. When you set up a PMO, or when you really want to get a PMO firing, the first question that we ask is, what are you looking to achieve? And the answer is always includes something about organizational value. Where are we getting good value from our investments, from our projects? So yes, and everything about PMO for me comes back to people.
Yeah. I mean, every project is really helping people, right? We're leaders of people to accomplish these goals. I totally agree. And welcome from Puerto Rico, somebody on this side of the world as well, right? So it's not just coming in. Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing I think about, right, is strategies to overcome resistance to PMOs, right? It's why do we need a PMO? We're doing it fine the way we are. Why do we have to get organized? You're just going to bring bureaucracy. It's just going to be overhead. It's going to slow things down. Do you hear those same challenges?
Oh, every day. In fact, we ran a call with a client yesterday. We're still not doing a lot of face-to-face here. So we're still in a world of Zoom meetings and team meetings. And we're supporting a client to put a PPM system in. Maturity is quite low, but super committed team. They really want the outputs. They know that they need the structure. And one of the reasons they know they need it is because when they're asked for information, they struggle to provide it. And there's always a rush and it's never quite right. And, you've seen it a million times. So the team are on board. But what's happening is that the PMO team on the ground are pushing to get things structured. So, we need to have a standard work breakdown structure, for example, and we need to make sure that we understand what templates and forms we're going to use. No longer are we just going to find one that we've used before. We are going to have standards set for this, and they will all be in the system, and we're all going to do everything the same way. So what the PMO team on the ground are finding is that the project managers, whilst they know they need this, they don't have the time. They're too busy. It's dawning on them that this is actually going to make things harder in the short term. And the PMO analyst that was on our call yesterday was kind of looking a little bit overwhelmed. And she's an experienced PMO person, so it's not her first rodeo. And we were having a bit of a laugh. I said, "You didn't take on a PMO role to make friends, did you? You didn't. You didn't do that. Nobody makes friends at first." But what we find is, whilst you'll get that pushback and that resistance, once the job's done, despite how uncomfortable people might be about it, the first couple of reporting rounds, people start coming and thanking you. "Oh, thank you so much. Life's so much easier now. I was asked for this report and I just pressed the button and out it came." And it doesn't take too long before all that resistance is forgotten and you're actually a really key value add part of the team in your own right. Forget about the value that comes from delivering projects on time, on budget. The support that a PMO can give to a project management team, if it's set up correctly and it's well functioning, means that usually you do end up making friends in a PMO. Nobody joins a PMO to make friends, but in fact, I've probably made friends with every PMO I've ever been in, but it doesn't happen straight away. There's a definite journey. So it's probably not for everybody to that end. But yeah, look, it's just about making sure people understand you're not doing it to be a bureaucrat or because you like the sound of your own voice. You're doing it because it's going to make things better. And then when it does make things better, you become a superstar.
Yeah, I think back to one of the things that I love every year is being a judge in the Pmo Global Awards. And through that competition where they help select the best PMO in the world, you have to present your journey. You have to, and you'll see some of the entrants have about a 2-year journey listed. And you're like, well, they just haven't gotten there yet, right? But then you get to the ones who make it to the final 4, the final 2 in that final round, right? They've been around for 10, 12, 14 years. And they talk about that now, right? Where executives come into their presentation and say how much value the PMO provides. It doesn't happen quickly, but when you reach that point, you have strong advocates throughout the organization of the value that you provide.
Yeah. And what we find is, in some of our repeat business, in fact, comes from where you go and you do that in an organization, then one of the executive team leaves and goes to another organization, and the PMO's immature, and then you start the journey again. So when you can provide that value and executive teams see how well that works and what that value looks and feels like, then they, for the rest of their career, will go around advocating for PMOs.
So there's, the reality is, though, a lot of PMOs are, I'm guilty as charged on this one, right? But PMO managers, kind of when they're good, they say, hey, let's promote the PM up to the PMO manager. Right? It's the good PM. Now you're going to be a PMO manager, but they're very different, right? A PMO manager is a completely different set of skills than a project manager has. Yeah. What do you say to that new PM converted to PMO manager when they have that oh no moment, right? It's like, what did I get myself into? How am I going to handle this? What advice do you have for them?
Well, we find that they're in two camps. The people who find themselves accidental PMO managers will go one way or the other, right? So a delivery PM who's passionate about delivery will usually not stay in a PMO manager role. They might do a good job, but usually they hunger for the cut and thrust of the delivery world, and they'll usually, after 12 months, they'll go back. My advice to that person was give yourself a chance to understand the difference. It is a different world. You're now the custodian of the standards. You're not responsible for doing it. Way more fun, I think, having done both.
Yeah.
The other camp, though, is the people who have a revelation. Actually, I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago about this very thing, and she was telling me she found herself managing a PMO, and her words were she felt like a creature from Mars when she landed in this role. She didn't know like really how to be. She was a delivery person, and then she started doing the things that she thought were important. And after about 6 weeks, she was hooked. And they were her words. She said, I was hooked. And it made me smile because that's how I felt too. So you'll get the people who get into PMO and are like, why would I do delivery after this? This is fantastic. And you'll get the people who just can't stop going for delivery. It's two camps. You also get the others. So people who have come from other backgrounds. They might have been accountants, or they might have been in strategy. And sometimes it's the last man or woman standing. Okay, can you go and be the PMO manager? And sometimes those people make good PMO managers as well because they've got almost a step removed from delivery, and so can bring a different lens. Again, I always feel like to be credible as a PMO manager, and this might be a personal feeling, you need to have done some delivery. So I think it's very hard for people who haven't done anything in projects to be strong in the role. But I have seen some people who've come in from kind of external to projects make good PMO managers.
Yeah, same sort of findings for me. And just to do a kind of a plug out there for everybody with continuing education credits, or PDUs, are often needed to get certifications renewed. And just a reminder to everybody, right? These shows, these podcasts are a good source of one PDU for you to be able to claim out there, whether it's PMI or other affiliations that you're working through. So take these sessions in, whether it's live like we're doing now, or you happen to do the recording. You can go out there and do some self-reporting for this time and get your PDUs in order. So always take advantage of that. The other thing that I always think about with PMOs is that what is a PMO, right? Is it a project office, a program office, a portfolio office, or whatever? How do you help organizations resolve through this challenge of just exactly what a PMO is?
Yeah, great question. So the first question is why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve? So that's got to be the first port of call. Sometimes it's because you want to do reporting. Sometimes it's because you're not having predictable project outcomes. Everything's coming in late and it's hard to track finances. So find out what's a PMO, as you've said, is a spectrum of activities, from very simple one-person reporting PMO to a kind of 10-person strategic enterprise PMO. And the first doesn't always turn into the last. So what's important to your organization? What do you want to do? And that's really the place to start. So you've got to right size it to meet that goal. What we'll usually find, though, is once that goal has been achieved, where do we want to go next? So we'll have this maturity curve. And again, you might not end up with a 10-person strategic enterprise PMO. You might end up with a little bit of portfolio prioritization. You might end up with some reporting. You might end up doing some quality assurance. It's about finding what adds, it's back to that word value again, what's going to add value to the organization. And if you've got that right by the level of executive support. So as long as you're aligned with what the executive team want, then that will usually work quite well.
Yeah, what I love about these conversations, right, is the consistency of my own thought talking to other people. So PMO Squad, we came up with our solution, the Purpose-Driven Pmo, right? And guess what? First step is define your purpose, align it with expectations of your executives as to what you need to do, right? And once you know your purpose, then go measure it. Are we achieving it or not? And then what do you do after that? Optimize to make sure you're staying fresh and your purpose evolves and changes over time. So we've never talked about that before. And you talked about essentially the same steps, half the world away, about this, because those are the bread and butter that we as PMO leaders need to be able to do to have long-term success and ultimately provide value, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about Pledge Consulting, right? What is it that, is there a specialty that you guys have? Is there functions or you do better than others? I mean, just to give a broader understanding of what Pledge offers.
Sure, thanks. So we've got three main service areas. Advisory. So it's fair to say that 95% of our work is PMO specific. So we do a little bit of project delivery if we're asked, but we're all about the PMO really. We do advisory, so that usually entails supporting organizations with PMO setup, health checks. We do things like PPM implementations, very much concentrating around supporting organizations to get value from PMOs. So all of the things that would sit under that. We do a bit of delivery, which is mostly nowadays PMO as a service. So when you will advise an organization what a PMO should look like, what functions it should contain, sometimes people will say, well, that sounds hard. Can you do it for us? Which we'll say, absolutely. And again, the key to that is right size. And no one wants a team of consultants sitting there in the long term if they're not adding value. So very, very conscious that that's a real value-driven service. So delivery and advisory. We're also have this year set up a capability practice. Sorry, we're calling it people now. Its working title was capability. We now have people practice where we do some training. And we also have a professional development program for PMO managers and project managers who want to advance in their career. So that's a 5-month program that's actually launching towards the end of February. And we've got some academics, industry experts that are going to lead that program. So that's a real passion of mine. I've gotten such a lot out of the PMO world. I'd quite like to help other people do the same. So training wise, we don't do certifications or any of that. It's real bespoke stuff. So if an organization has a need to understand about PMO value or to do some fundamentals of project management, we'll tailor that course to meet the organization's specific needs. So relatively small part of our business, but it's a growing part, I'm happy to say. I'm also very badly doing a PhD at the moment, looking at the link between leadership development and project outcomes. And what I've realized is that I need to, because that's something I care about very much, need to incorporate some of that in our service offering. It's about being authentic for me. And yes, we want to continue to thrive helping organizations in the advisory space and in the delivery space. But I've got to kind of niggle to do something that supports the broader community that's not going away. So we're very much going to kind of do a bit more in that space as time goes on.
And, we've had pretty good guest list from Australia, yourself, Elise Stevens and Julia Steele, Fatima Bucci, Colin Ellis, Amira Amazahari. But I don't think I've ever asked any of them, like, how robust is the PMO community there or within organizations? Like in the UK, I know PMO is such a accepted, strong part of organizations. In the US, it could be better. I don't think it's as strong as it is in the UK. What's that culture, organizational culture like there in Australia and the acceptance of PMOs?
I think it's pretty strong. We have a couple of conferences here, or we did in the old world, in the before times, that were just for PMO communities. And that was always a definite community of people. And look, we've tried to keep that going through some online events. Like at the end of 2020, we did a PMO Leadership Symposium, which was an online 1-day event that was very well attended, purely in the PMO space. We've also stolen some of your, I shouldn't say stolen, inspired by your success. We've also set up a PMO and project leadership podcast. And we're just recording a new season of that, actually. And that's, again, to get in these community members and try and keep that conversation going while we can't get together face to face. So look, I think it's strong. We're not a huge we're not a huge population here, and we're very spread out. That's one of the problems that we have. So when we have a conference, we're probably getting about 40 people in the room. Whereas if we did the same thing in the US, we'd probably have about 300. So the volume is quite low, but the passion is high. So I feel strongly that we kind of try and keep that going in these weird times we find ourselves in. And as a business, we do try and do a bit of community gathering, be it virtually or in person.
Yeah, it's interesting. PMO Squad, obviously, we're U.S. based, but we have an employee who is here in the States, but she's on about a 6-month time frame where she's in Sydney right now. So every week when I meet with her, I ask her to give me a fun Australian fact so that I can take advantage of this personally as well. And we met this week, and she said, I think the population of Australia is about 22 or 23 million or so. And I
think we're 27 million now.
27 million?
About 23 when I got here, I think. So we're growing, but we're still small.
Yeah, and I compared that here, and that's like the size of the state of Texas, right? So one of our biggest states equals that. So because I always want to put in context, landmass wise, you're basically the same size as the U.S., but population wise, it's a tenth of the size or so. Which
people are passionate, but as I say, spread out.
Absolutely. What else do you have for people who want to make that jump? Right? If you're a good project manager today, or maybe you're not in project management, right? Maybe you want to run PMOs. What would be the guidance that you would give them to say, here's what you need to do to get yourself ready for a career as a PMO leader?
Yeah. Great question. So I think it's about learning and self-education. So when I say learning, of course, I mean project management certifications or courses or whatever you need to do to have that theoretical knowledge. Very important. As the custodian of the standards, you have to know what the standards are. So get right across, whether it's PMP or whether it's Prince 2 or whether it's Agile certifications. Go and immerse yourself in this world. LinkedIn Learning has lots of great stuff. Websites like ours has videos on that you can specialize in various topics. Educate yourself. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, and sometimes people find this hard, is reach out to people and ask. I'm always thrilled when someone messages me and says, can you tell me about this? Or have you got half an hour for a chat? I will always make that time. And most people who are passionate about PMO will say yes to. So reach out to your own network, reach out beyond your network to people who have experience in this space, and ask them what they think. People are keen to help. It's a funny area. I think I struggle to think about other disciplines that evoke so much passion and so much discussion and debate. So there's lots out there to consume. But yeah, there's nothing like having a conversation with a person who's done the job you want to set you up for success.
Yeah, and I second that part about asking the community, right? We have such a strong knit community of PMOs out there, whether it's the PMO leader global community that's out there, certainly PMO Global Alliance, House of PMO, the PMO Impact Group. There's so many different organizations, but if you reach out to any of them, I don't think anyone's ever told me no, right? If I ask a question, if I ask someone to be on a show, if I ask them to be on a webinar, if I ask anything, it's always about we all want to improve. Right, project management kind of has this, bad connotation sometimes within organizations. So we all want to help one another get better. Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. People will give you as people are busy, but they'll still for a bit of support or morale or a bit of knowledge transfer. People will always say yes. I said that's my experience. So don't shoot me if somebody says that.
Yeah, just my luck. We're jinxed. Now, next time I'm going to ask someone to come on the show, they're not going to join us. One is we're kind of getting close to time here. I want to make sure we kind of get through everything. And I want to be able to get you an opportunity to talk about all of your items. Are there any items or kind of last words of wisdom that you have for PMO leaders out there or project managers, right? Anybody in our industry that you would kind of give to them?
Yeah, look, persevere. I guess it's not an easy journey to raise standards, to increase maturity, to get people to change. Because what we're usually talking about here is business transformation. So it's not easy. So persevere. Remember that it's people-centric business. You're not going to win the battle by forcing something down someone's throat. It's conversation, it's dialogue, and I come back to that word, perseverance. Keep at it. Be it project manager or project sponsor or PMO leader, we just need to keep trying to aspire to the standards that we know we need to reach.
Yeah, I would agree. I have your LinkedIn here up on screen, but is that the best way to connect with you? If after the show folks want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot. I think we've got the company Twitter is @PledgeConsult. My personal Twitter is @LouiseWillTweet. Feel free to reach out in any way that works for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just checking the last set of comments that came in here, and people-centric. Nice. I love that. Great session. Thank you, Elise and Tony and all the others who participated with their comments throughout this. I tried to sprinkle them into the questions as you were going along, so I really appreciate everyone's feedback. And of course, thank you, Louise, for joining us. I really appreciate that. Hopefully that you're off to a good start on your Friday. It's a good way, hopefully, to get the day going. And
perfect. And thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for ages. So thanks.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners, right? From whether it's the podcast, whether you're on LinkedIn Live, whatever your format is, we thank you for joining us every other week when we get together. Or I guess that's called a fortnight in Australia, right? We had non-US English term. I learned that one. Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for doing that. Be sure to visit our website. You can go out to projectmanagementofficehours.com, or you can go out to the PMO Squad website and click on podcast there to be able to catch all of our episodes. We've had fantastic guests over the years, so we're super thrilled with that. And we have an amazing lineup of guests coming up. We're booked all the way through June already. So look forward to hearing Candace Porter, Bruno Morganti, Ben Peters, Tim Creasy, Louise Worsley, Ricardo Martin, Sanjeev Augustine, Melissa McDonald. I mean, so many more coming on, covering all different topics from PMOs to project management to change management, training, you name it. They're all going to be with us. So I'm super excited for that. And a reminder, of course, we do record these shows. We are live. And you can tell we're live because we responded to your feedback and questions on LinkedIn. But we do record these, right? So we're also able to catch it if you weren't able to make this. We appreciate that. So subscribe to Project Management Office Hours on Apple Podcast or iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, whatever your platform of choice is. That's it for now. Office hours are closed. Until next time, I'm PMO Joe, and you've been listening to Project Management Office Hours.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Project Management Office Hours with PMO Joe. You're not alone in your project management journey. We're here to help you achieve your goals. Subscribe to Project Management Office Hours on your favorite podcast platform to catch all of our episodes and hear industry leaders share their story and secrets to success.